Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. This video is part of a series of videos covering my top 51 tabletop games of all time. This is not the final video in the series, but this is the final part of the countdowns. We're going to cover games number 10 all the way down to number 1. Now after this video, in a separate video, because I'm trying to keep every one of these videos under 40 minutes, but in a separate video, I'm going to do a little bit of an analytical, talk about some of my top picks, why I picked them, why some of the changes happened on my list, and talk about some of the things that I didn't want to cover because I don't want these videos to get super duper long. So the objective is that final video after this one is over, just to go over and cover some extra things and maybe give you some cool stats and maybe let you know about some of my opinions. Anyways, that's enough of the wah stuff. Let's bring everything down to the table and cover number 10. Number 10 on the list is Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization by Vlaada Chvátil. Now this is a Civilization style game for 1 to 4 players, and the first thing you think about when you think about this game is there's no board and there's no map. There's no players playing with miniatures moving across the map or armies across the map, because this is a Civilization game played as a card game. And I know your first thought is, well, you think of a Civilization game, what's the first thing you think of? Well, we know pretty much most people think of the classic PC game Civilization itself. And for a lot of gamers who enjoy Civilization games, in our mind, that's basically the basis we think of whenever we think of a Civilization game. You're thinking about armies moving across a map. You're thinking about raising your culture, you're thinking about keeping your cities, your people happy, you're thinking about controlling your government, you're thinking about exploring the land, you're thinking about all of these things. And Through the Ages, somehow magically, through the magic design of Vlaada Chvátil, has managed to capture all of that gameplay in a card game. Now in the game Through the Ages, players are going to be playing a game where they're trying to get resources on a track. They're going to give them extra technology that they're going to add to the empires that they need to monitor. They need to monitor the happiness of the people. They have to control the income and resources. They got to make sure that they're not expanding too quickly, because that creates unrest. It also creates waste. You need to increase your government. You need to go to war against the other players. This game has everything a Civilization game should have, without a map, which is really strange, and at first you think it can't work, but for some reason this game does. It is an extremely enjoyable, very challenging game that, even though every time you play this game you're going to play with the exact same cards you play with every single time you play the game, the cards are all going to come out the same from the same deck every single time, but it's the way the cards come out and the fact that there are never enough cards for every single player to get every single technology guarantees that every single time you play this game, it's going to play differently. Now there's an expansion available for the game that adds a lot to the gameplay. I don't own the cardboard version of it, but I do have the application which plays it, and it makes me definitely want it, and as soon as it is available where I live, I'm definitely going to be picking it up. But that's going to add a little bit extra variety to the game. But even without that expansion, this is a game that's absolutely fantastic. There's so much depth and so much strategy in this game. And again, for some reason, it just works out so great. From the way the cards come out, from the way the technology is going to expand as you're going through the ages, building up your empire to create the most vast empire. And the best thing about this game is it does have the one thing that I always like in a game. It has player interaction, thanks to these cards right here that allow you to go out there, capture islands, go to war, add extra things to your empires, and you have military in this game. This game does everything in my mind a Civilization game should do, but without having a map, without having miniatures move across the map, just as a very simple looking card game that has so much depth, so much complexity. That's Through the Ages. Number 9, and dropping from number 1 for my 2017 list, is Blood Bowl from Games Workshop. Now Blood Bowl, the easiest way to describe it is this is truly fantasy football. By that I mean every single player is going to be a coach controlling a team of fantasy races. And this game has all the typical fantasy races you would think of. You have multiple different elves. You have the high elves, the wood elves, the dark elves. You have the humans, you have the wonderful orcs, you have the Skaven, you have the lizardmen. Skaven are basically Ratmen for people who are more familiar with Dungeons and Dragons and not the Games Workshop world of Age of Sigmar and all those, but basically they're just Ratmen. It has all of these fantasy races in it, and basically in this game you're going to play a game of football. Well, with a little bit of a fantasy twist, because, you know, orcs don't quite get the concept of getting the ball to the end zone. Oops, I should correct myself. This is American football for all my European watchers out there. This isn't the true football, but hey, you get the point. Anyways, the idea of the game is the players will be playing a game of football, and the players are trying to score points, or if you're orcs, maybe just pound the other players into the dirt and possibly maybe score 1 point. But the cool thing about this game is this is a wonderful game that you can play with a progression to it. At the start of every season, because you're going to get a whole bunch of friends together. Every person is going to build a team based on one of the races that they want to play. Yes, multiple people can play the same race that they want, but basically one person is going to pick a race, and they're going to build their team with 1,000,000 credits. Your team is going to start pretty weak with not too many star players, not players that have a lot of potential, but as you play the game and as they happen to live through the games, depending on what kind of players you happen to be playing, your players can become more powerful, become star players, becoming epic grand football players, just like all the people who like to watch football, who like to cheer for their favorite quarterbacks, their favorite teams. That brings the joy and the fun of that idea into a board game, and that is Blood Bowl. Now, I haven't played Blood Bowl all the way since the original first edition came out. Matter of fact, I still have the first edition. These miniatures right here are from the second edition, and what you're seeing here is the 2016 version of the game. And I basically have every team that pretty much exists at this point because I enjoy Blood Bowl so immensely. The greatest thing for me when I want to play and have a lot of fun with my friends is to get about 8 friends together. Everybody picks a team and we play through an entire season of Blood Bowl. It is so darn enjoyable. It is so much fun, and it gives you the enjoyment and fun of playing a sports style game. You can feel like you're the armchair quarterback, so to speak, but you're having fun watching your team progress from the lowly Black Elf blitzer who starts off not too great, but then creates those magical plays that you continue to remember, that you tell those stories about the time that you managed to come back from the end playing that halfling team, one of the worst teams in the entire game, but managing to win the game. Stories like that are stories that you're never going to forget, and those are just the fantastic stories that you get when you play Blood Bowl. I enjoy Blood Bowl immensely. I will always enjoy this game. Now, drop down from number 1 down to number 9. What you're about to see as we continue with the list here, it's not because the game has lost any of its luster or any of its enjoyment. I still think it's a fantastic game. It's still very solidly in my top 10. That's number 9, Blood Bowl. Number 8, and the first of 2 brand new games to the list, is Escape Plan from Vital Lacerda. Now, the best way to describe this game is to sit down and spend many, many hours watching every escape and heist movie you've ever watched. Watch Ocean's 11, watch Reservoir Dogs, watch, I can name a whole bunch of movies that this basically fits. But this is basically every one of those movies as a board game. In this game, every single player is going to be a mobster, a mob boss, a criminal, whatever you want to say, who has a certain amount of days to escape the city, a city that you're going to explore as you play the game. Now, the objective of the game is not only to escape, because you have to escape, because if you fail to do so, you can't win. It doesn't matter how well you do. But the objective is to escape with as much money as possible. Now, this idea of this game is taken from classic escape films where the players have just done the final score and they realize that all the heat is on all of them and they need to escape from the city as quick as they can. So you're going to go to your lockboxes, you're going to go to your hidden places, you're going to go to your reservoirs, all these places where you manage to hide your cash, grab as much as you can in those 3 days, and escape before the police get on you, because in this game, as you're exploring the game, law enforcement has been going across all these tiles trying to hunt you down as you go into your safe houses, you go into all these various locations, these clubs and everything that you gained throughout the game, and getting these resources and trying to get out. Now, this game has done an absolutely fantastic job with the theme of the game. This game is a game that plays up to 5 players, and this is a game that is absolutely brilliantly designed. Now, it's interesting that if you look at my top 51 list from the top all the way down to number 1, you'll see that it looks kind of interesting how I have my Vital Lacerda games organized. You'll see that all the way lower on the list, or higher on the numbers, however you want to say it, we get Lisboa, which is his most richest, but also his most complex game. Halfway through the list, you have Vinhos, which is a little bit less complex than Lisboa. And then finally, you have Escape Plan, which is actually his least complex game that Vital Lacerda has ever made. So why me, somebody who likes extremely complex games, why do I have my games organized like that? Well, here's the first reason why this game deserves to be so high on the list. This game plays up to 5 players. It's one of the only designs that still exists. I know there's the first edition of CO2 that plays up to 5, but it's the only one of his games that's currently in production from Vital Lacerda that plays up to 5 players. All my game groups are 5, 6, or 7 players, so that alone is one of the reasons why this game is so high up on my list. I can get this game to the table. But that dovetails into the other reason why I enjoy this game so darn much. The game is actually really, really easy to teach. Now, I know a lot of Vital's games are complex and they have a lot of depth and strategy to them, but when you look at them, they're very intimidating to teach because there's so much going on in those games. This game, when I teach it, it's not intimidating to teach because not only are the mechanics intertwined with the theme so fantastically, which is something that Vital does already anyway, so that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but he's done it in a way to create a game that doesn't feel quite as intimidating as all his other games. Matter of fact, this is probably Vital's most approachable and, in my opinion, most enjoyable game just for that reason, because I can sit there and pull out this game with other players and it doesn't intimidate them. I mean, players can look at it and go, okay, I can figure this out. I can get how to play this. I'm going to be exploring. I need to go into my safe houses, and my objective is to get as much money as I can before time runs out. I can do that. That theme matches, and that theme fits for so many people, and it's so darn easy to teach for that reason, whereas opposed to some of his other games can be a little, well, they're more richer, more deeper, more mechanically dense games. Those games are really well designed. This game is simpler in that aspect, and that's why I really do enjoy this game. I like deep, rich games, but I also like a game that I can bring to a table. So Escape Plan, it's number 8 on my list. It's brand new to the list. It's a fantastic game. I actually think it's Vital's best design for all those reasons that I listed. Matches the theme, matches the gameplay, easy to teach, easy to bring to the table. It's a game that I can always enjoy. That is Escape Plan. Number 7 on the list, and moving up from number 9, is the absolute number 1, hands down, best cooperative game ever made. That's going to be Robinson Crusoe. Now, I know that's a lot to say, but this is absolutely a brilliant design with rich theme, rich gameplay, and so much challenge and so much replay built in the game. You can get this game, play it so many times, have it kick your butt, go back and play it again. You can beat the game, go back and play it again. You can pull in different friends, play it again. Well, I'll talk about the expansion in just a second, but this is such a rich game. Now, what is Robinson Crusoe? Robinson Crusoe is a cooperative game where, if you've ever read the books or you get the idea, players are going to be stranded on an island or something along those lines, because this game is scenario based. Now, there are lots of scenarios, such as the classic King Kong scenario. You have scenarios where you're trying to survive a volcano, scenarios where you're trying to survive a cannibal island. You have the classic Swiss Family Robinson. You are castaways. You have all these scenarios plus downloadable scenarios and all these things, plus this wonderful campaign system. And your objective is you're trying to complete the scenario. Now, the very first basic scenario is a castaway scenario where the players are beached on a island, and you have to explore that island. But the richness of the game only begins there, because you need to explore an island that provides resources. You need to survive through an event deck, and you need to do things such as create snares. You need to create spears. You got to create daggers. You got to create fireplaces, or I'm sorry, campfires, not a fireplace. It'd be a really cool trick to create a fireplace on a deserted island, but hey, I digress. But while all this is going on, you're going to have a slightly randomized deck of cards that is based on an extremely large deck of cards. You see this whole deck of cards right here? You're probably going to use about a dozen of these cards every time you play the game, ensuring extensive amounts of replaying the game. And as you play the game and you're trying to do certain very simple things, such as exploring an island, extra cards can be added to that deck. As you're trying to build on extra things to make your life on the island so much simpler, just basic things such as a shovel so you can dig a pit, so your food doesn't spoil and expire on you every day or every month, depending on what scenario you're playing. Extra things are being added to that deck. And these cards are going to have choices on them. And these choices are so darn devastating, potentially to you, if you fall prey to them, because they're going to be very tempting things, because this is a game where the game is working its best to make your life miserable in a fun experience, obviously, but is working hard to be an extreme challenge. You're going to have cards where it's going to come up and say, you can get some blueberries, but if you eat them, something bad might happen if that card comes back in the deck. And the big caveat is if it comes back. So you're going to look at your very meager food supplies and you're going to go, there's 4 of us on this island. We have enough food to feed 2 of us. And in this game, if one of us dies due to starvation, we all lose. So I could take these blueberries, and then all 4 of us will eat and we'll survive another day. But if that blueberry card comes back up, we're all going to be poisoned and take points of damage anyways. So do you fight that? Do you take that risk? Do you take that gamble? Plus you have the slight randomness of dice, and you have this exploration. And again, like I said, this is a scenario-based game that has so much richness, so much replay, and so much variety. Matter of fact, I'm sitting here talking about it. I actually want to play the game right now because I love it so much. But this is a game that has never failed to be an enjoyable experience. This game has kicked my butt many, many times. I always want to bring it back to the table. I've beaten it many, many times, and I still want to bring it back to the table. And while I say that, I haven't actually ever beat every single scenario that I own for the game, because I've downloaded all of them. I still can't beat the King Kong one. And the one right here where you go over here and you're trying to, this cool one, which is downloadable, I still have not beaten that one. I beat Castaways many times, but it still kicks my butt many times. All these scenarios are just so darn enjoyable. This is an absolutely brilliant design, a very fantastic game, and I am happy to say this is the absolute best cooperative game I have ever played, and I think it's the best cooperative game on the market. That's Robinson Crusoe, number 7, moving up from number 9. Number 6 and moving up from number 12 is Dungeon Lords. Now, Dungeon Lords takes the classic PC game of Dungeon Keeper, where we're going to do a little role reversal. Now, in a lot of games, your idea is to be the good guys, the heroes, going out to a dungeon to take out the bad guys in the dungeon and win the game. Not in this game. In this game, you are the Dungeon Lord, where the goody two-shoe heroes are coming to your wonderful, nice, safe haven. Okay, you're a Dungeon Lord, you're a bad guy. But, you know, you're a little bit confused in life, so you don't think you're really the bad guy. But these horrible little goody two-shoes are coming out and doing their best to ruin your wonderful dungeon, where all you want to do is just raise your bad guys and your monsters, such as your little cute, adorable little trolls, your little goblins, your ghosts, your beholders. And, oh well, there may be some other bad things in there. Maybe a dragon. But hey, you're misunderstood. You're the Dungeon Lord. These horrible goody two-shoes are the ones who are coming to ruin your day. Okay. This game is absolutely brilliant. This is a wonderful design, and this is the combination of a worker placement game on a worker placement game where you're trying to build up your dungeon while you're trying to keep your dungeon from being torn down by these heroes, while you're setting traps, while you're using your monsters to fight off these heroes, and while your grandest worry is that the mighty, mighty paladin is going to show up if you get too evil and really ruin your day. Of course, you know, if you're sneaky, if you're misunderstood enough, you might bring the paladin into your dungeon just to give him a nice little hello, because you have a nice, wonderful cell set up in your dungeon for him to visit and live out the rest of his days. Okay, sorry. I really, really enjoyed Dungeon Lord. Dungeon Lord is an older game. It's been out for a long time. I have the Ultimate Edition right here, the Happy Anniversary Edition, that has basically everything that's available for this game. This game offers rich strategy, rich depth. It is an extremely challenging game, and it's a game where you are constantly gauging what other players are doing, because the action other players take affect the actions you can do on your turn. Now, if I can quickly find the right cards, those are the traps. There's cards in here where you are going to use these cards. Oops, I didn't waste too much time. Anyways, you're going to have cards that you're going to play down on your hand, and you're going to fill up these spaces, and these are the actions you're going to take on your turn. The trick is, when you play a card, you don't get it back immediately the next turn, so you need to plan how your actions are doing when you're going to this worker placement board. The other trick on that is it's actually a race, because the position you get on this worker placement board is going to judge the resources you're going to get. So every time you play this game and you have the hand of cards in your hand, you're basically looking at what the other players do, and you're going, I know I need goblins, but if I wait and somebody else needs goblins, they're going to go there first, they're going to get less goblins than me. So if I play my card right, I may be able to time this right perfectly. But if I wait too long, since there's only so many spaces, I may not be able to get the space I need, so I need to watch it. Now, this person already got goblins last turn, so they can't get that card back, so I know they can't do it. But this person needs goblins, but they also need monsters, so you're generally watching what all the other players do. And as you've heard me say many, many times, I enjoy games where you're trying to get into the minds of the other players, try to figure out what they're doing so you can have the most advantageous turns when it comes to your turn. This game is absolutely brilliant. It is a phenomenal design. Just ignoring the theme, which is such a rare theme in the games where you actually get to be the bad guys. Oops, I'm sorry, the misunderstood. But you get to play the bad guy. You're building up your dungeon. This is a fantastic representation of an extremely classic PC game that was really enjoyable then. It's still enjoyable to this day, and it's really, really enjoyable as a board game. That is Dungeon Lords. Number 5 on the list, and moving ever so slightly from number 4, is Dominant Species. Now, Dominant Species is a game for up to 6 players. It does play all the way down to 2 players, and I highly, highly recommend you play this game as a 4 to 6 player game only. If you really insist on playing as a 2 or 3 player game, you're going to want to make sure that everybody controls at least 2 of the races here. Because in Dominant Species, every single player is trying to control a species. And so I said race a minute ago. Pretend I said species, because it's all about the species. Every single player is going to control a species, such as mammals, such as reptiles, such as birds, or as my absolute favorite, the arachnids, because I always play red. Anyways, the idea of this game is you are trying to make your species the most adaptable to a planet that is slowly suffering glaciation. It is slowly being covered because we are actually approaching the Ice Age. Now in this game, the way this game is going to be played out is you are going to have your disc, which is going to decide actions you're going to take on your turn. And players in player order are going to be placing out these little discs right here, these little cylinders, to represent what actions they want to take on this turn, and it's first come, first served. So being the first in turn order can make a huge difference because there's only so many of these actions I'd be taking every single turn. And then once everybody's placed their cylinders out on the board, we're going to resolve these from top to bottom, from left to right, and these are the actions you're going to take. Now every one of the species in the game has one special power that's unique to them that allows them to manipulate how they're going to interact with this board just a little bit. For example, my favorite's the arachnids. Get to kill stuff. Sorry, spiders are kind of cool. Don't mean to creep you out, but they're kind of cool. And as you're doing this, you are trying to adapt to this planet, like I said, that's slowly suffering glaciation. As you're playing the game, there's a certain amount of resources that every one of these hex tiles produces. Or, well, I shouldn't say resources, but some produce sun, some produce meat, some produce vegetation. All these things that your species are adaptable to. And as long as you are adaptable to this tile, you want to be the one that's most adaptable to that tile, so you can, as the name says, be the most dominant species on that tile. As you're playing the game, we're going to continue to score victory points based on how dominant you're staying throughout the game, and also based on the interaction that's going to be caused by these cards that are going to slowly come out, until the final card comes out that brings about the end of the game, where we're going to have a final scoring round. So there's multiple reasons why I like this game. Obviously, as you've seen, because of my evil use of the spiders who like to attack the other players, you see that I enjoy this game because there is plenty of player interaction in this game. I also enjoy the fact that this is a game that is pure interaction. And I also enjoy the fact about this game that there is no way to be completely knocked out of this game if you play smart. I have seen games, and I remember one of my most memorable games of playing this game, where I was playing my wonderful spiders, and another player was happening to play the reptiles. I had landed a volcano which should have completely obliterated them from the game. They managed to turn that little defeat and turn around and come into second place by a measly 2 points. That's how much they lost the game. Just by smart play, smart interaction, and that is what I really enjoy about this game. There is so much smart play, smart interaction, smart planning, and the game fits the theme so fantastically. Now, on its surface, this game is pretty much a war game mixed in with an area control game, mixed in with a whole bunch of interaction with a little bit of randomness based on how these tiles are going to come out, and based on how these dominants or these different cards are going to come out that allow you to adapt to this planet and cause different things are going to happen. I enjoy Dominant Species so much. I think it's an absolutely brilliant game, with a slight caveat that you need to play with a 4 to 6 player game. If you want to play with less, you're going to have to play multiple species per person. But beyond that, the game is a brilliant design. The game works perfectly. It's a fantastic, very enjoyable game that is Dominant Species. Number 4 on the list, and dropping from number 3, is Kemet, a game for 2 to 5 players. And this game, as I said earlier in the list, is part of a trilogy of games involving Inish. It's involving Kemet and Cyclades, Cyclades, Kyklades. I'll go through all the pronunciations as long as you guys don't get bored. But this is a game that's basically a dudes on a map style game. But it is so much more than that. This is a simple reason why there's no reason for games like Risk to exist, because this game takes that gameplay and creates an absolutely brilliant design where the players are trying to gain the most amount of victory points and hold on to those victory points to gain victory at the end of the game. In the game, this is an Egyptian themed game, but it's a little bit more than that, because this is more like a Stargate version of Egypt, because the players are going to have special powers to increase their races. At the start of every single game, I have the expansion, so I'm explaining this with the expansion in effect. The players need to pick 3 of the 4 available pyramids, and they're all going to start at various levels. Basically, you're going to start them all at level 1, or 1 level 2, 1 level 1, 1 level 0, or whatever you want to do. But your objective is to gain dominance over this land by gaining the most amount of victory points, by aggression, by controlling the cities, or by getting these power cards based on a certain kind of races and the powers and the pyramids that you have at the start of the game. Now, this is an action allotment game where at the start of the turn, every single player gets a certain amount of actions, and you're going to spend your action just to perform these actions. Once everybody's have actions, the turn is going to be over. And you are vying for control over this area on this Egyptian style map in an effort to control the game and hold on to the most amount of victory points to bring about the end game and win the game at that point. Because in this game, you can gain victory points, you can lose victory points, you can gain permanent victory points, but there's also temporary victory points. If you lock in enough of those quick enough and smartly, you can still win the game. Now, there are so many reasons why I enjoy playing this game so much. I enjoy the game because obviously there's a lot of player interaction in this game. It's a phenomenally designed game. But ignoring those points, the reasons why I enjoy this game is because, firstly, I enjoy the combat in this game. Now, combat in this game is purely card-based. Every single round that there's going to be combat, each player is going to play a card face down, and then we're going to reveal these cards, and these cards are going to tell us who wins the fight, how much damage was done to the other player, and other things along those lines, also based on playing these Divine Intervention cards. But the way you're going to play these cards is to judge every single one of these fights. Once you played your card, it's gone, and you don't get it back until you've gone through all of your cards. So this game has a wonderful tug-of-war and a wonderful back and forth, because you're going to have rounds of combat where everybody has their cards, and you're going to have to start watching what the other player is doing, because you're going to think to yourself, okay, are they sending in a suicide mission because they're trying to trick me into over-defending the spot? Or are they really wanting the spot because they really need the spot? Are they going to come at me with a large force that they plan on sacrificing to play a weak card, hoping that I'm going to send all my units over here to defend it and waste my complete time, while their objective is to go over here to another location and then play their high card when I've already burned my high card and I can't defend myself? So you have this back and forth just from the way the combat cards go. Plus you have these Divine Intervention cards, which give you extra special powers, extra special abilities, but then you get the final thing that I really, really enjoy so much about this game. Every single one of these cities has a pyramid. As you raise the level of your pyramid, raise the power of your pyramid, you're going to gain access to more and more powers, and these are a finite supply of powers. It's first come, first serve, so you are racing other players to raise up the power of your pyramid to level 4, so you get the final level 4 powers. Here's the trick. Every single player can only have 3 of the 4 pyramids in the game, and every single color of pyramid is based on a kind of game style, I want to say. Red is really, really aggressive. Blue is a little bit more defensive. White is more about gaining extra abilities and extra interaction. And black has got its own little style to it also. I enjoy this game immensely because there's such a large amount of replay in this game. This is one of those games that's a area control dudes on a map style game, but it actually plays fantastically well at multiple player counts. Now, I still am going to say, if you want to play a game like this as a 2-player only game, I think Inish is the better game over Kemet. But if you're looking for a game that plays multiple players, 4 or 5 players, I think this is the superior design. I think it's a wonderful design. I have so much fun playing Kemet. It is just a wonderful area control, wonderful amounts of replay, fantastic combat system, interesting area control game. That's Kemet. Number 3 on the list, and dropping for number 2, is Clash of Cultures, a game where players as an empire are trying to gain dominance through various ways, through a game that plays out either as a set amount of rounds or a variety amount of rounds, depending on how you want to set up the game. Now, in the game of Clash of Cultures, every single player controls a culture. Big surprise there. But you're going to be trying to raise up through a tech tree, gaining different technologies to improve your empire. You're going to have to worry about the happiness of your citizens. You're going to have to worry about the culture of your citizens as you're exploring a map that changes every single time you play the game. Now, this game takes the idea of a civilization game. Now, while it doesn't take the classic civilization where you're going to go from 4000 BC all the way up to 2500 AD as you go ahead and explore space, this is going to concentrate on a certain period of time where the players are going to be riding on horseback. They're going to have spearmen, possibly going to be riding on horseback. But it's that time period, and you are trying to build up your empire and gain the most amount of victory points and win the game. Now, this game has a lot of interesting mechanics in it that make it such a solid contender in my top 51 tabletop games of all time. Now, let's just ignore the fact that the game has a lot of variety based on expansion that's no longer available, which is really, really unfortunate. But just speaking about that expansion, because I have to, because I own it, it's part of the reason why I enjoy the game. In this game, every single player is going to pick a culture, an empire from classic world history, and your objective is to try to gain dominance over the other players. Now, you can gain dominance through trying to gain culture by gaining cultural influence on their actual cities. You can use your armies to go to war. You can explore. You can build ships to go out there where there's landmasses to come across that have water on them, allow you to explore across this board. And your objective, like I said, is to gain the most amount of victory points while you're trying to watch your empire, control your different progress on all these tech boards, And these various technologies are going to give you extra things, such as the ability to build roads. They're going to give you the ability to start building extra kind of units. They're going to give you the technology of metal, which is going to make you more effective in combat. It's going to give you all these wonderful things that I really find are a necessity in a Civilization-style game. Now, this game does use the randomness of dice when it comes to combat, but that is slightly compensated by the fact that, unlike in a game like Risk, where you're just looking for a certain number or higher, like maybe a 5 or higher to succeed, in this game you're going to roll your combat dice and you're going to add your combat dice together, which gives you a higher percentage chance to score at least 1 kill, which is a lot better in my mind. So you're never going to have those circumstances in Risk where you're going to take an army of 20 people and you're going to have another person who only has 2 people, and they're going to be a luckier roller of the dice, and they're going to win all the combats just because the dice are in their favor. That will never happen in this game because the combat is a sliding scale where you're going to add to the total of your dice. So for that reason alone, I can actually appreciate the combat system of this game, and it's one of the things that still allows me to enjoy this game, even though myself, I have terrible luck when it comes to rolling dice. So you have this wonderful Civilization-style game with a tech tree, with the happiness of its people, with culture, different ways to win the game. You're not going to win this game by going totally out to war, but you're also not going to win this game by going out for culture only, and you're also not going to win the game by only going after technology alone. You need to expand your empire. You need to explore this world as you're worrying about barbarians coming across. Barbarians add extra fun, extra civilizations, encountering the other players while you control one of the classic empires from history. That's Clash of Cultures. Number 2, and the final new to the list game, is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now this a game alone, putting it on my list, has allowed me to kill a lot of games. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, for anybody who is not familiar with the idea of the game, this is your classic granddaddy role-playing game that has been around since the 70s, gone through multiple editions, and I've been there for a lot of the editions. Matter of fact, I can bore you to death by going down into my crawl space and pulling out my basic set D&D, my 2nd edition, my 3rd edition, my 4th edition, and of course my 5th edition, which is what I'm playing right now. Now, why did this manage to get to the top of my list? Well, the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons has done what 4th edition failed to do, and that was to capture the imagination of the gamers across the world and bring Dungeons & Dragons into the forefront and bring out such the fantastic gameplay that it is. And let's not ignore the fact that it basically fixed the horrible gameplay that was 4th edition. Not to harp on it just for a second, but since I made the comment, I better finish it up right now. 4th edition basically turned Dungeons & Dragons into a combination MMO, multiplayer, massively online PC game, and a board game. And while it worked for some people, it did not work for the vast majority of us, and it's what made a lot of us walk away from the game system itself. 5th edition fixed that by making this game approachable, enjoyable, and understandable by the masses, and creating this fantastic role-playing game. Now, this game, being on my list, kills a lot of campaign systems. I know a lot of people have been asking questions throughout the list. Well, what about the Pathfinder Adventure card game? What about this dungeon crawling game? What about this dungeon crawling game? What about this dungeon crawling game? This kills every single one of them, and I mean literally every single one of them, because there's no reason for me to play those games. Okay, let me take that back. There is a reason to play those games because they are fun, but none of them are as fun as this classic role-playing game. Now, anybody, and I will stand behind that, can play Dungeons & Dragons. If you want to be the Dungeon Master, you can. If you feel like it's too intimidating, go buy a module. Go buy the basic set. Or not the basic set, but the basic essentials box set, which comes with an adventure. Actually, I think it's the other box set, but it's the one that has the Lost Mines of Fendelvar. But you can pull that out. You can read that. If you've never played the game before, it walks you through how to be a Dungeon Master or DM, Game Master, whatever you want to call it these days. How to be that, bring a group of friends to the table and have a heck of a lot of fun with the gameplay. You can play this game for years and years and years, never ever coming up with an adventure because you have so many fantastic campaigns. You have the Rise of Tiamat, where you're going against the Grand Lady Dragon with all 5 of her horrible heads. You have the Horde of the Dragon Queen, I think that's what it's called, but it's basically part of the series. You have the one that's about the giants. You have the one that's about the Temple of Elemental Evil. You have all of these campaigns. You can literally take any of these campaigns and play this game for years and years and years and never have to come up with your own adventures and have tons of fun, have everything put out for you and still play a fantastic game. Or you can create your own campaigns, your own adventures, and your own games, and have brilliant amounts of fun just by playing this game. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition wholeheartedly brought me back into the RPG world. My friends and I, we play this game every other week, almost like clockwork, except during the summertime where some of us work out of town so we can't do it. But as soon as summertime ends, we start up our campaign and we have an amazing amount of fun. This is a phenomenal game. It is an extremely enjoyable game. It is playable by anybody who is willing to sit down at the table, learn some very simple rules, roll up a character, and have tons of fun. That's Dungeons & Dragons, a game that's basically killed every single campaign style board game, every adventure game, every dungeon crawler, because this game just does it so much better. Number 2 and brand new to my list. And now we have number 1. Moving up from number 8 is Space Empires 4X, the ultimate 4X style game. Heck, it's in the name, so it has to be right? Well, actually it is in this case. And when I'm talking about Space Empires 4X, I am including the 2 currently available expansions. There's one more expansion that's supposed to be coming out. There's a lot of people giving feedback on it, and I can't wait for that one to come out. But right now I'm talking about the game with the 2 expansions right here. Now, Space Empires 4X is a 4X style game. If you're not familiar with the concept, it's explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. And that's this gameplay in space. Your objective is to take your empire, explore your sector of space, and move across this sector of space and gain victory and obliterate your opponents by using tech trees, by evolving your spaceships, by using the fog of war, by managing your empire, by managing your resources, creating economical pipelines. I can sit here and go on and on and on about all the things you can do in this game with all the research trees, how you're going to build up your empire, how everything's going to cost you money, and how all this stuff goes together to create this phenomenal game that plays for 1 to 5 players. Yes, this game does play from 1 to 5 players. There are, and again, I'm talking with expansions, so don't run out there and say, hey, the base box doesn't let me get up to 5 players. You need expansions. But this game is scenario based. You can play this game cooperatively. You can play this game as a solo game where you're playing against an AI that's trying to do various different scenarios. So all these scenarios are available in these books with all these expansions, and you're just looking at this absolutely phenomenal game. This game takes every classic PC Empire style game that involves space and puts it into a board game, and it has everything in there. Now, when it comes to a lot of board games, you're going to see lots of sacrifices when it comes to the gameplay, because a lot of these ideas are really hard to put into a board game. But the designer of this game, Jim Crone, has done a phenomenal job of bringing all of those mechanics from the PC down to the tabletop. Now, I got my first gaming start playing RPGs back with the classic Dungeons & Dragons. But after I got out of RPGs, when I was moving into high school and moving towards college, I started getting really heavily into PC gaming. I started playing classic games like Civilization. I started playing like Masters of Orion. And I started finding out that I really love space games. So what this game has done is taken everything I love about those classic, enjoyable PC games and made it into a board game where I can sit down with my friends and play it. Now, there are some really crazy scenarios you can play with this game, and I'm not going to lie, some of these scenarios, especially when you play the 8-player scenarios, you're basically looking at an all-day affair. And if you're willing to do it, you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun doing it. But I'm not lying. It's going to be an all-day, 8-hour affair, but you're going to have tons of fun doing it, because you get this game where you are going to start off with your little empire, barely having any of your sector of space explored, and you're going to move on exploring these unknown reaches of space as you interact with the other players. And there's a fog of war, there's a tech tree, and everything I've already mentioned that goes to make this game so fantastic. Now, yes, combat in this game is dice-based, but you can build technologies that can help you out. Also, this game is not just about the combat, because the fog of war is so amazing in this game. You can, okay, yes, this is a hex-based game. Let's just get this out of the way. Your ships are going to be basically be these little chits that you're going to use to move across the board. But all of these are going to be face down. So as you're moving these little units across the board, other players don't know if it's a decoy or if it's a grand army that's coming knocking on the door. So you're going to be spreading out based on the size of your engines. It's going to judge how far you can move out. You're going to go out there and attack other players' economic pipelines if they're starting to expand too quickly and you want to shut them down. There are just so many options for this game, so many rules, and everything that brings us together to bring this the absolute #1 top game on my top 51 tabletop games of all time. That's Space Empires 4X with all of the expansions. Hope you enjoyed this list covering my top 51 tabletop games of all time. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me. That's offtheshelfboardgamereviews at otsbgr@gmail.com. If you like this video and you like this video series, be sure to subscribe and also click the little notification bell down below to get notified when extra videos are put out on the channel. Now, before we close out the show here, I just want to say a few things. This may be the final part of the list, but this is not the final part of this video series. I'm going to do one more video. Again, my objective was to keep these videos all under 40 minutes. I know I'm pushing the time here really badly, but the objective was to keep it all under 40 minutes. I want to do one final video covering a couple extra thoughts, covering a couple of things that may have surprised me, and covering some other things. Well, I don't want to do the wah stuff rambling, so let's just close this out by me saying, as always, thanks for watching.